All right, here we go again. So remember, anybody looking at me is probably working for at least the Democratic Party, which is illegal, if not foreign powers and narcos and all those type of things. And in reality, the Democratic Party could be wired. Whoever's advising them could be wired to the narcos and the Iranians and all that. Again, like I told you years ago, it's just like you're the Justice League, or again, I was the Justice League. I don't know if anybody else was in. Maybe some people are coming back into it, and they're the the Lex Luthor and all that, the anti-Justice League, right? So they're all together in it. Because I was going, oh, isn't that? Well, he just said it was the Iranians. What is he saying? It's the narcos now? Again, they try to discredit you with bullshit, and anybody will buy into it who's corrupt, right? It's just everybody just goes on board with some bullshit argument. So I'm sure there's a fund with some of that Iranian money to pay people off with in the United States. I never knew whether the CIA actually unmarked the bills or not. That's why I told everybody to shut up. I said, you need to find out what's actually going on. Because that would be what I would do. I would have told them it was unmarked bills and marked every one of those bills and watched where they went. There's no way I would have turned it. Now, if they turned over unmarked bills to the Iranians, then obviously the Democratic Party was trying to get some of that money. So the key is this. If you take them, they'll try to sue you and then say your honor will enforce the laws. You can't allow that. You got to tell the judge, we want 6 months of our enforcement of the traffic laws. And essentially what you're going to have to do is you can't enforce it in the entire city, but within whatever it is, a quarter mile of your ICE operations. Again, if that confuses the populace, if they say it's going to be confusing, then you say the entire city. Right. And it's, again, the suburbs, if you have the operation. So there's no doubt that this is the greatest exception to posse comitatus that you've seen. Right. It caused a death. If you were enforcing traffic laws, she'd have been gone already. That day she would have been gone. Again, what they're doing is they're radicalizing people. And each day they increase in their radicalization until they're ready to have a similar confrontation as Mrs. Good there. Well, at a certain point, you would also have to arrest them and take them in, but they still have the traffic ticket. I doubt the magistrate's going to get rid of the traffic tickets. You may find one that's willing to risk it, but he's got that. If a magistrate disses that order, because it would be a court order at that point, most likely, or something like that, then the chief judge is in on it because they wouldn't risk it. So what you'd have to do there is, you can do impeachment, but also the appellate court would order them. I mean, well, that's the problem. If you don't enforce the traffic law, then they're going to do. I mean, she straddled 2 lanes, and I guess Schiff tried to say she was doing a 3-point turn. Right. She was straddling the lanes. That's illegal. I don't even think ICE was doing that generally. I mean, they only do it when these people do this, right? Well, it's commensurate with a law enforcement officer. Again, I will tell you, they're vigilantes and they're a militia. They're a paramilitary. That's who they are. That's who Miss Good was. She's the same as the mafia paying off a cop, and the cop takes a powder. They knew how to. Cops know how to do that, don't they? Don't they? Didn't that in Minneapolis PD knows how to right away do it? You don't enforce any of the laws around ICE. Isn't that funny how they know how to do that? Been telling you they've been doing it for years. Actually, decades, I've been telling you. Right. No, those become enforcement-free zones. No longer does law enforcement enforce any laws. I guarantee members of the public were calling the police department on 911 saying, we got crazies down here beeping their horns, blocking our traffic. I'm trying to sleep. Right. I work night shift. Yeah, Fry gives a shit about nobody. He's a lying piece of shit. Right. Cares about that corrupt paycheck. Once they're in that anti-justice league, then they're in. That's how it works. Right. I just wasn't sure whether because maybe Walz had shifted since then. I don't know. But Walz, worked with Trump on one of the national emergencies, so he was, we considered him a little bit legitimate. Right. Or maybe, since the Somali money came along, decided to be different. So, there's no way that you can trust them to actually enforce the law. Now, the Dems will probably create a fund through one of their militias or paramilitary organizations such as Ice Watch, Antifa, whatever. It's the same thing. It's just a different name. And they'll probably start, paying off those tickets. But again, then eventually you can take their license. And a federal judge will order them to treat those tickets as real, because we're dealing with, again, Katrina, the MPs were, if I'm not mistaken, were enforcing traffic laws in Louisiana. I think I read it before when I was researching national emergencies. Right. So essentially, you probably would have been able to impound her vehicle. Right. Because what would happen is the laws on the federal installations would be applicable to the federal zone. So the federal law that we have, the traffic law that we have on, I don't even know if there's any near there. There's probably a couple. I'm sure there's a naval. Is there a naval? With military installations in Minnesota. Military installations in Minnesota. There's an Air National Guard base. U.S. Army Reserve Center, MEPS. Let's see what else we have. I probably learned much. There's a fighter wing and a military base in Duluth. Camp Riley's there. I knew about that one. Right. So some of these airlift wing, 33rd. So in that area, there is an application of federal traffic law. It would be the same. Right. Now, as far as each person needing to be notified, obviously the Justice Department does have some issue. I guess there were late notifications. The judge is going to work with that. That's fine. But as far as not being notified, did they notify the federal government of their address and do it properly? Don't let them say, because again, we're getting into this bullshit where some immigrant who doesn't want to go back to their country may be affiliated with narcos and sex traffickers and fraudsters, because there's a good chance, based upon what we're seeing, right, whether they're charged or not, is going to tell a judge that, yeah, I told them where I lived and they didn't contact me. The judge knows they don't tell the truth. Judge is playing a game. She's got a bunch of H-1B friends. Right. She probably needs to recuse. She has too many immigrant friends. Rick. That's why they put her on it. Somebody's scamming. Right. I told you, they're playing a game. Somebody in the clerk's office knows who they want to give it to. It's a criminal conspiracy, and then they give it to the judge they want to give it to. Somebody's leaking how to time it. Somebody's actually just saying, to hell with the order of assignment. Just give it to her. Right. Now she has to recuse. Just too much of a personal interest. Name might as well have been Indira Gandhi. Right. Right. No, they weren't tested for their allegiance to the United States. None of these people. That's the problem. It's not a problem with an immigrant, but they were never tested for their allegiance to the United States. Obviously, they have none. No, it was a requirement to become a judge once upon a time. Excellent. So that's the other option. But you can't, like, don't let them make, because they'll make the deal and then, not write the tickets, or write the tickets and throw them out. Right. Or write light tickets. Right. So eventually her vehicle would have been impounded. Right. I don't know if the government can do that. What requires you to seize their vehicles. Right. You want to look at that right now, just in case you stay with federal stuff. Right. Seize their vehicle and don't return it until the end of the case. So could be 6 months, a year. Right. Charge their criminal conspiracy. Shifty Shift is at it again. Shifty Shift Lock. Right. Or Shifty Shylock. That's it. Shifty Shylock. I can't believe he died. Shifty Shell Shock, or whatever his name is. What was that guy's name? He's a good guy. If I could have gotten his life, I could have kept him alive. Right. See, you have to pay for all this. All those blocks you federal agents put in my life. Right? No, I would have kept Shifty Shell Shock alive. I'd have got him right. He went through like boot camp or something. And maybe even got in the military. Who knows? Shifty would have been a good guy in the military. Just have to keep him off narcotics. Shifty Shylock. Call Shifty Shylock. I'm going to start calling him Shifty Shylock. No, when people come to Earth that have missions, sometimes they don't turn out at all right. It's a lot for people to understand. But again, so God said that it's not good for man to be alone. It's not good for woman to be alone either. So again, you have to now read the scriptures. Right. So, well, I know they're physically causing people to be alone. They're using spells. They're using psychology, using all sorts of things. Okay. It's part of what the wealthy people get off on. They get off on it sexually. Okay. Maybe Elon's one of them, I'm going to tell on Elon again. So, you know how social Christian Elon came along? Social Christian Elon and his repopulation of the planet. I was surprised it came out. So one day Elon is in what was it, Germany or France, somewhere in Europe at a sex festival, and that was it. All of a sudden he started fixing his image. They busted Elon at some sex festival in Europe. And next thing, he was the guy repopulating the planet. That's actually a social Christian. All right, so, well, it's a scam. They'll say they're going to make a deal. Oh, we'll enforce the laws. So we have to get back to this thing where we can possibly seize their vehicle, because it's what they're using for the crime. Right. And that's going to require the Marshal Service to look up a few things, but I don't think it's that difficult. So, but really, if you were doing the traffic laws, you would eventually impound the vehicle. And that's a lot simpler. Right. Thank you much. No, I would say, I would argue with the judge, say we want 6 months of enforcing the traffic laws, because we don't want to come back here in a month and have to tell you that they're throwing the tickets out in their court. Right. They're obviously not good. The judge obviously can't throw the ticket out in federal court, because it's actually going to be attached probably to a larger case because of the way they act. Right. They'll be attached to impeding case, but there'll be traffic citations along with the impeding case, which will allow us to impound the vehicle based upon traffic laws. And then there might be a law in the books. I don't know what federal traffic law is. Actually, the deputy marshals could probably, on a federal station, I don't know if they probably couldn't do it, just in the state, but on a federal installation, I think the jurisdiction, because it's the largest jurisdiction and authority of any federal officer, could probably write traffic tickets. I think we could. I think they're allowed to do anything. They're actually kind of like again, that's why they used to use them. They used to be the National Emergency Police, because they just could enforce any law, naturally. But again, the way federal law enforcement works, a federal law enforcement officer, whether ICE or anyone else, can enforce federal law. They can arrest you for federal law, but what they'll do is they'll call the other agency and they'll come pick you up, and then there'll be a witness in the case. Right. Well, the police chief in Philadelphia said it was, wasn't him, and the sheriff is just, transportation to court and that kind of stuff. Right. So, I don't think a deputy for the sheriff, unless they're an activist. An activist would do it. But anybody else on the sheriff department in Philadelphia, they would not try to arrest an ICE person. They would make a complaint. Right. It's against the law. Great. It's federal supremacy covered activity. I had like one pressure cooker that could do like spaghetti water, and not, if you try to depressurize it too fast, it gets crazy and starts spitting water out. I've only had one pressure cooker that could actually do that accurate. I can't even remember which one it was. I think it was the top of the line Instant Pot, but it may have been something else. Maybe that. No, it was that Norco. It may have been Norco or something like that. It's actually a good name. They used to be the highest pressure cookers you could purchase as far as electric ones. I have a cheapy Instant Pot, but I mean, it's fine. It just doesn't have the features. I don't need the features. I don't do anything with it thing except for like boiled noodles and rice. But especially living in New Mexico, you want to have a pressure cooker. Take forever to cook anything. Now, there's no reason for Mrs. Good to be out there or feel it. Again, it's very unhinged what's going on there. That's not normal. I'll just, whether they call it activism or that's not normal what we're looking at. And what's essentially happening is they never became a cop. They never became a law enforcement officer. They never put forth the effort to become somebody in the military, to be a hero. So that they're becoming fake heroes. Somebody's taking advantage of that thing inside of people. Like, what's the worth of my existence? Now, I might be wrong, but as far as her going to New York and feeding the homeless, it's like, what's his name in ATF? I can't even remember his name. He used to be a deputy marshal. Steve. It was Steve, I think. Steve something. I think it was Steve. But I might be wrong. I can't remember. I had his name. I remembered it one time, and then I forgot it. Like in 2010, I remembered his name or something. He called me one time. He's like, it was like the day that everything was due. Court Security Annual something. They send out surveys. That's it. The survey was due, and he called me. He goes, I know you do this. Can you help me with it? I'm like, today? So we went through. We got his thing done, right? But they're not real. So they go on a vacation, a liberal themed vacation in New York, and they feed some homeless people. And who do you think's filming? The other cronies, the other activist cronies, right? Just like who's protesting? Who's actually out there protesting? You see how the news covers it? Oh, there's 100, 1,000 protests. It's the same people. It's the same people as Ice Watch. You might get a few additional ones, but come on, we know who they are. You're going to go smoke some cannabis, take the day off, maybe some shrooms, and we're going to protest. like they're of sound mind, right? She wasn't of sound mind on it. Right. She was rather unhinged. Of course, what are you going to call him? Shifty Shylock. He says she's doing a 3-point turn. Right. It's like any other ambulance chaser lawyer. Right. That's what the Democrats use, ambulance chaser tactics. And Republicans will use them sometimes. Right now we're talking about the Democrats. So she was unhinged. Oh, I'm not mad. That would freak me out. Oh, you're not mad. Okay. And you just spent the last how long sitting here in the middle of traffic beeping your horn? And you're not mad at nothing, right? This is just how you act every day. Agreed. So again, we know it wasn't a 3-point turn. We know she was unhinged. And you know what else we know? That ICE is very understanding. That would drive me nuts. I don't know how fast I would have picked her up, but I wouldn't have waited that long. They're cursing my spaghetti here. It's nice of them. See, I can reveal things by doing this online. Right. And they're the reason I don't have the other, the other pressure cooker. Right. You know, we know from a fact Mrs. Good was rather unhinged that day. Right. And so was her concerned whistle-bearing wife. No, they're crooks. They're crooks, man. Let's face it. I don't know how Minnesota defines criminality, but again, based upon federal law, they're crooks. Based upon state law, they're crooks. Based upon local law. Right. Do you know, let's say ICE never happened. What would Minnesota PD do to somebody that was doing that? Right. She'd have been on the ground. They wouldn't have wrote traffic tickets. They would have seized the vehicle. Right. Because she's a nut. At a minimum, she's a nut. Right. But she was engaged in crime. No, I fixed it. Food's fine. Yeah. You know, what's happening in the mind is, even in ICE's mind, even in your mind, they're covering over what that is, how crazy she was. It took a few days to see through it. Even when the video was released, people weren't thinking, well, this is a nut. Well, you have to understand, any law enforcement officer that sees a nut doing nutty things like that has got concerns as to where it could go and how quick it could go there. Right? So that actually did do that. Right? Nobody knows what she would have done after that. You're acting like she was just afraid. She was just getting away. Drive, baby, drive. It's like Bonnie and Clyde. They were Bonnie and Clyde. Right. Or at least dreaming of being such a thing. Fantasizing of such a thing. So nobody knows. Yeah, the vehicle went straight because she was no longer commanding it. Right. But if she had it, she may have just spun around real quick and then charged at the officers. There's a million of people that have done that in history. If you ask me, she's crazy. I'm not mad. Well, you're pretty unhinged. I mean, you've been sitting here how long? I'm saving my neighbor. Oh, okay. I think you're keeping your neighbor up that works at the prison at night, okay? Because I know he's here, and I know she's here. Or the jail. A couple of the jailers, they can't call because they work for idiots. Right. A couple of the night shift jail people are like, oh, Jesus Christ. They can't call, they get fired. Right. Or could, risk even just discrimination or something. Right. Oops. Thank you. So again, what you see as an untrained person or as a liberal activist, even as a politician, is not what law enforcement sees. And the law enforcement sees it correctly, that she's unhinged. Right. And that unhinged status could easily become, homicidal. And that's what I'm trying to explain to you. Again, you're blocking, but there's anecdotes and there's things I can post online to show you how quick something like that degrades. You've seen it a million times. I mean, there's videos all over online. Right. Well, at that point, I don't even, it's actually even in a fleeing and eluding scenario, it's still, I mean, you can't shoot her, but it's close to it. Like, what is she actually doing? Right. Again, we don't know what she was going to do. The evidence isn't that she's non-confrontational. But you have to understand what she's doing. These are federal agents. Nobody does that. Not even the hardened crooks would do that unless they were, under the influence of some sort of narcotic. That's why I'm asking. Was she under the influence of some sort of narcotic? Was she smoking? Her eyes look pretty glassy to me. Was she taking pills? It was pretty common in Minnesota. I'm not, Minneapolis. I'm not off base. If she's on pills, then she shouldn't even have been driving. She's smoking cannabis. She shouldn't even be driving. So again, there's a lot to find out. Also get the 911 call logs somehow. Find out if people were calling 911 and they weren't answering 911 calls. That's part of the violations of civil rights. Well, stay peaceful. Praise God in all that you do. Praise God.